My wife's brother told his girlfriend that the abortion pills she slipped into the vitamins were working perfectly, while my wife sat right next to us, unaware that our 7 miscarriages were not a tragedy, but a cold-blooded murder planned by her own brother. This was the 3rd day of our cruise, which was supposed to be a celebration of life, as my mother-in-law had pompously put it. In reality, it was a nerve-wracking waiting game because the reading of my wife Chloe's grandfather Arthur's will was scheduled in a month. Everything revolved around a single, fine-print condition that made the whole family feel like contestants in some high-stakes reality show. If his granddaughter, my Chloe, did not have children by the time of the reading, her brother Jake and his insatiable girlfriend Tiffany would receive $4 million. Chloe was only due $600,000. For million. That amount is enough for a sane person to lose their mind and see their own sister only as an obstacle to wealth. And Jake, as I realized in that moment, had lost his mind long ago and irrevocably. We were sitting at the pool bar, in that ridiculous, elite area where Jake had dragged us, constantly emphasizing how much he anticipated the future that was about to arrive. My Chloe, 33, was sitting next to me, fatigued by the heat, and getting ready to take her evening vitamins. It was a large bottle labeled prenatal complex, because just a week before the cruise, we had found out she was pregnant again, this time with twins. We hadn't told anyone, not wanting to jinx it, not wanting anyone to know about this fragile, almost invisible hope, given her tragic history. 7 miscarriages, 7 losses, each one searing a piece of her soul and leaving only ash behind. After the 5th one, a few years ago, she tried to jump off our apartment balcony, screaming that her body was a cursed graveyard for the unborn. It was Jake who talked her down for hours then, using their secret childhood language that he himself had invented, a language that I had considered a symbol of their, as I believed, unbreakable bond. And there, right on the sun-drenched deck, Jake leaned over to Tiffany. He spoke in that same language. He thought no one but Chloe would understand that their conspiracy was a perfect, meticulously planned crime. But Chloe didn't remember it. 7 years of pregnancy-related PTSD had erased even the memory of teaching me that language years ago. And I swear, remembered every word. The abortion pills you put in her vitamins are working perfectly, he said. I nearly choked on my sip of beer. My hand froze above my glass. It wasn't just working. He used some kind of local, foul slang that I remembered from those lessons. Slang that meant this was happening certainly, irreversibly, and very quickly. The world around me collapsed into one single point, the vitamin bottle on the table. A split second, Chloe was already reaching for it. I knew I couldn't tell her the truth without breaking her forever, without sending her back into the abyss that Jake had once pulled her out of. Not now, when she was pregnant again and believed in this chance. I had to act, and act immediately, without words, so she wouldn't realize something was wrong, so I wouldn't give myself away. I sprawled across the table, pretending to be absolutely wasted on a mimosa I had barely touched. As I did this, I deliberately knocked the table with my elbow. Glasses, napkins, the ice bucket, everything crashed onto the floor with a clatter and a clang. The vitamin bottle, thankfully, also fell, but quietly, rolling under a nearby chair in the commotion. I started babbling some drunken nonsense about being sick of sobriety and demanding a drink right then, immediately, grabbing the nearest empty bottle and pretending to drink from it, ignoring the shards of glass. Jake and Tiffany, annoyed and surprised, looked at me, but their eyes were full of self-satisfaction. They thought, just a drunk fool, created a distraction, excellent. Chloe, though embarrassed, accepted my drunken performance. I apologized, feigning clumsiness, and said I needed the restroom, but instead headed straight for the ship's pharmacy kiosk. I needed something, and fast. I found a large packet of the most ordinary sugar pellets, similar in size and color to her prenatal vitamins. I waited until night. My hands shook from shock and fury as I pulled my bag out from under the bed, careful not to make a sound. Chloe was asleep, her hand resting on the stomach where our babies were growing. Our twins. This knowledge gave me strength, but also choked me. I realized that if it weren't for this accidental pregnancy and my knowledge of the language, I would now be sleeping next to a woman who was slowly killing our children, believing it was just another tragedy, another curse. I quickly but carefully replaced all the pills in her large bottle with the harmless sugar pellets. I spent the entire night sitting in the chair, staring at those two bottles, one with pink, innocent-looking sugar pills, the other with genuine poison that, it turned out, was the cause of all our pain, all our tears, all her nightmares. 7 times. 7 miscarriages. Jake, my dear brother-in-law, a man I had considered a brother, had saved her from the balcony, knowing he was the one who drove her there. He was both her executioner and her savior, and only I knew about this dual reality. We had 1 month until the will reading. I understood that I couldn't break her heart now. She had just started living again. I decided I had to wait. Wait until we were home, had a medical report, and had a therapist's support. I had 1 month to gather evidence and take Jake down. I looked at the poison in the bottle and promised myself that he would pay not only for those 4 million, but for every time Chloe screamed in pain and for every tear I had seen on her face. The next morning began with breakfast. I watched Jake closely. Chloe complained that she felt nauseous. Maybe it's seasickness, I said casually, suppressing a surge of nausea myself. Jake choked on his coffee. His eyes darted around in sudden fear, and then his lips stretched into a self-satisfied, disgusting smirk. He didn't know his little plan had failed at the very beginning. He was certain his work had already yielded results. I looked at him and felt a cold, calculating anger that I had never experienced before. I needed him to think everything was going according to plan. I needed to give him a chance to dig his grave deeper. I knew this would be a long, agonizing month. But I had a goal: to save Chloe and to avenge our lost children. And I had the entire ocean to start this game, because time was my only ally. I watched my brother-in-law blow $200,000 of money he didn't have on stupid luxuries in 3 days, convinced he had just poisoned my wife out of the inheritance race. He kept celebrating the necessary business decisions, all 7 of them. The cruise ship felt less like a vacation spot and more like a floating trap with every hour that passed. The tension between the 4 of us, Chloe, Jake, Tiffany, and me, was a palpable, electric thing. Only they thought it was excitement for the will reading, and I knew it was the thin ice beneath which a whole ocean of criminal intent was waiting. My focus narrowed completely to 2 things: protecting Chloe's secret pregnancy and letting Jake believe his poison was doing its job. The next day, the moment of confirmation arrived, but not the kind they were expecting. At lunch, Chloe suddenly grabbed her stomach, wincing visibly. It was just a terrible reaction to some cheap sushi from the buffet, nothing more, but the panic it sent through me was immediately overshadowed by the look on Jake's face. His eyes lit up, not with concern, not with familial worry, but with pure, unadulterated triumph. I watched as he actually fist-bumped Tiffany under the table. He leaned in and whispered to her, again in that damned secret language, "We're going to be rich, baby." I thought those pills would never work. Tiffany, in a momentary lapse of greed, looked at Chloe's retreating form. She'd run to the restroom and mumbled back in their language, "Do you ever feel, I don't know, a little bad?" Jake snorted, taking a large, celebratory gulp of champagne. "For what? After the will reading, she can pop out as many as she wants. 7 miscarriages, though. 7 necessary business decisions," he corrected, his voice flat, completely devoid of human emotion. That phrase, 7 necessary business decisions, became the soundtrack to my internal rage. 7 times I had held Chloe while she cried. 7 times I had cleaned up the blood. 7 times I had buried a piece of my hope. And for him, it was just a ledger entry. I realized then that Jake wasn't just greedy. He was a sociopath who used family loyalty as a tool. The man who had once saved her life was now mocking the very trauma he inflicted. I knew the biggest mistake I could make was confronting him now. I needed hard evidence, and Jake, in his arrogance, was providing it by the truckload. He was so sure of his impending wealth that he went completely off the rails, starting his spending spree immediately. He had already calculated his $4 million. He started acting like a millionaire on day 3. The next morning, I was refilling our drinks when I overheard him on a video call with his biggest client. His voice was loud, slurred, and aggressively dismissive. "You know what, Chandler? Go F***ck yourself. I don't need your peasant money anymore." I walked up casually, handing him a mojito. "Rough day?" I asked innocently. He laughed, "Already drunk before noon." Best day of my life, man. I'm going to be so rich. I could buy 10 companies like that dump. Don't you want to wait until you actually get the wolf first? I asked, pushing his buttons slightly. You know, don't count your chickens before they hatch. He sneered. Poor people wait. Rich people plan. Big difference. Tiffany grabbed his arm, whispering again in their language. If you're so sure the pills worked, why wait? Let's celebrate now. I watched them march straight to the ship's luxury boutique. Over the next 72 hours, Jake completely lost all self-control. He maxed out every credit card he owned, buying designer clothes, expensive jewelry for Tiffany, and electronics, all with the security of money he would never have. I saw him march to the cruise director's desk and demand to sign their most exclusive, top-tier membership, Pinnacle Elite. $150,000, the director said carefully. No problem, Jake slurred, signing the contract without even looking. His stupidity was actually breathtaking. In the span of just a few days, he had already spent what amounted to nearly $200,000, burning through an inheritance he didn't possess. He was confident he had eliminated his sister, and the universe had to reward his business decision. The pinnacle of his descent came that afternoon at the buffet. When a staff member politely asked him to wait in line like everyone else, he exploded. Do you know who I am? He screamed, his face turning purple. I'm about to own this cruise line. You're all fired. Security had to escort him back to his cabin while other passengers filmed the whole pathetic meltdown. I immediately took note of the date and time. That footage was gold. It showed malice, instability, and a clear pattern of abusive behavior, which would be crucial later. I was building a file. Every conversation, every outburst, every reckless purchase. I was logging it all mentally, preparing to transfer it to a digital file the second I could. The final night's dinner was the scene for his last, glorious hurrah. Jake stood up, swaying slightly in his wine-stained designer shirt. A toast, he shouted, spilling some champagne. To new beginnings. To successful business ventures. That's when Chloe lurched from her chair, hand over her mouth, racing for the bathroom. I watched Jake. He actually smirked. Too much rich food for her delicate stomach, he announced in English, then added in the twin language to Tiffany. Finally, I thought those pills would never work. He thought she was losing the baby right then and there. His face was a mask of cold satisfaction. He was celebrating a termination. What he didn't know was that 3 days ago, I had confided in the ship's doctor, a kind man named Conrad, telling him a carefully edited version of the story, that I suspected the pills were tampered with and that I had swapped them for sugar pills. He had agreed to monitor Chloe's health discreetly. I looked at the bathroom door. Conrad had seen Chloe rush out and followed her. An hour later, they both returned, both wearing massive smiles. Conrad held up a crisp, clear ultrasound photo. Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Murphy, he announced to the entire dining room. The ultrasound confirms you are 12 weeks pregnant with twins. I picked up Chloe and twirled her around, laughing. The color drained from Jake's face like someone had pulled a plug. That's, he stammered, his eyes huge and white. That's impossible. The doses. I mean, she took every head in the dining room turned to face him. I slowly got to my feet. The words were forming in my mind, ready to destroy him right there, in the language he thought was his secret weapon. But then, I looked at Chloe, radiant with relief and joy, and realized the smart play wasn't burning him in front of everyone. The smart play was building a case so tight, he couldn't wiggle out of it. Chloe's health, her peace, mattered more than my immediate satisfaction. I closed my mouth, sat back down, and let the moment pass. Everyone started clapping and congratulating us. I pulled Chloe close, watching Jake's face cycle through confusion, then panic. He kept looking at me, expecting me to say something. I just smiled at all the well-wishers crowding our table. Later that night, when Chloe was asleep, I found Conrad near the ship's medical office. I pulled him into an empty conference room, showed him the original pill bottles, and explained the vitamin swap I'd done 3 days prior. He listened without interrupting, then typed up an official medical note. He documented when I'd first confided in him, what I'd observed about Jake's behavior, and the protective steps I'd taken to swap the pills. He printed it out, signed it, and handed me a copy. This paper trail, he said, shows exactly when you discovered the problem and what you did to protect your wife. I thanked him and immediately headed to the security office on deck 3. I needed to lock down that footage of Jake's meltdown before it disappeared. I filed a formal report, giving a detailed description of Jake's threatening behavior and his screaming at staff members. The officer stamped it with a case number and promised the footage was now flagged. Walking back, I spotted Tiffany standing alone by the railing, staring out at the dark ocean. She looked genuinely shaken up, not her usual cocky self. She kept glancing around, worried someone might see her. It was clear that she might crack under pressure if I played this right, because she didn't have Jake's arrogance to protect her from consequences. Back in our room, while Chloe was in the shower, I pulled out the swapped pill containers. I photographed them from every angle with my phone, making sure the timestamps were visible. I uploaded everything to 3 different cloud storage accounts. I was building an airtight case, piece by piece. My hands were still shaking when Chloe came out, looking pale and tired. I knew the real battle, telling her what her brother had done, was still ahead. But for now, we were safe. And Jake had just signed a $150,000 contract using money he'd never receive. The game was on. I had to look my wife in the eye every day, pretending her brother wasn't a murderer, because the high-risk OB-GYN said one shock, one breakdown, could kill our twins. Meanwhile, Jake was desperate, calling his client a peasant and trying to up the poison dose, convinced the pills were just working slowly. The cruise ended, and the tension didn't dissipate. It just moved from the confined space of the ship to the suffocating confines of our city. We were back home, but the threat was still active. We had exactly 3 weeks before the will reading. My priority was a delicate, 2-front war, medically stabilizing Chloe's high-risk pregnancy and legally tightening the noose around Jake. I spent the first 2 days home in a state of hypervigilance. I had to tell Chloe something, but not the full, crushing truth. I booked an emergency appointment with a high-risk OB-GYN, citing her history of 7 losses and the current twin pregnancy. At the appointment, I explained our trauma history to the doctor, Dr. Holloway, in careful detail. 7 documented losses over 4 years. Dr. Holloway scrolled through the records, her face serious. Ms. Murphy, your case qualifies as recurrent pregnancy loss. We need aggressive monitoring, weekly ultrasounds, progesterone supplements, and total stress management. Your cortisol levels must be controlled. High stress is not optional anymore. It's a medical risk to these babies. She gave me the ammunition I needed. I looked at Chloe, who was already pale and shaky from reliving her history. Chloe, I said, my voice carefully controlled. The doctor says even a severe emotional shock could put the twins at risk. We have to treat emotional calm as seriously as medication. I had found my shield. I couldn't tell her about Jake until I had therapeutic support in place, specifically someone specializing in reproductive trauma and family betrayal. I spent the next 2 days calling every therapist in the area. Most were booked solid, but on the 6th call, I reached the office of Faye Holloway, who specialized in exactly this complex, nightmarish overlap. We booked an emergency intake session for the following week. While building the protective medical wall around Chloe, I was also building the legal fortress around Jake. I contacted Sapphira Wyatt, a legal translator specializing in rare dialects. I sent her a 30-second sample of Jake and Tiffany's pool deck conversation. She called back within an hour. Yes, she confirmed. I can handle this. It's a very specific regional variant. I'll need the original files and full context for a certified legal translation. It will take 10 days for the preliminary transcript. I uploaded everything I had. The cruise recordings, the photos of the swapped pills, the incident report numbers, using encrypted file transfer. Everything was set in motion, but the wait was agonizing. The tension escalated immediately. That very afternoon, I was at the breakfast buffet, standing behind a decorative palm plant, nursing a coffee, when I overheard Jake bragging to Tiffany about the custom Tesla he'd already picked out, describing a downtown condo with floor-to-ceiling windows. He was living the dream, completely blind to the fact that his entire world was about to crash. Later that morning, I saw Tiffany pull him aside behind a pillar. They spoke in their language, their voices low and sharp. I reached for my phone, my hands shaking with pure, unadulterated rage, and hit record. We should up the dose, Tiffany suggested in the secret language. Just to be absolutely sure it works, if it's taking this long. I captured every word. Their casual conversation about increasing the dosage to poison my wife, a conversation about killing my unborn children, was now recorded. I had to lean against the wall for a full minute to calm down after they walked away. This was concrete evidence of ongoing malicious intent, a conspiracy that continued even after the cruise ended. The physical threat mirrored the legal escalation. That same week, the security officer from the cruise line emailed me the full incident report. It detailed 3 separate incidents where Jake had threatened staff and used profane language toward passengers. The officer's notes described his behavior as aggressive, entitled, and potentially dangerous. The report included documentation of the $150,000 Pinnacle Elite membership contract he signed while drunk. This was no longer just a private family matter. It was a pattern of public, recorded misconduct. I spent an entire weekend turning our spare bedroom into a war room. I compiled everything: Dr. Holloway's medical notes, the cruise security report, bank statements detailing Jake's spending spree, and photos of the pill bottles. The final dossier was already 50 pages long, a chronological roadmap of his sociopathy. 2 days before our scheduled therapy intake session with Faye, the preliminary transcript from Sapphira arrived. My hands shook as I read through the document at the kitchen table. It was organized by timestamp and topic, detailing 12 separate conversations where Jake and Tiffany discussed the poisoning. Instance 1, the dosage. Instance 4, Jake bragging about his 7 successful attempts. Instance 9, calculating how to split the $4 million. The transcript confirmed the dialect was genuine and specific to their childhood region. This was the gun, and the legal analysis was the smoking barrel. I knew the moment of truth was imminent. I had the evidence, the medical shield, and the professional support scheduled, but the emotional cost was rising. I was living a lie, protecting Chloe from a truth that was eating me alive. Every time she smiled, every time she put her hand on her stomach, I saw Jake's sneering face and heard his casual calculation: 7 necessary business decisions. I contacted Lucian Mansfield, a colleague's referral for a high-stakes probate attorney. I needed a legal strategy to navigate the inheritance. I explained the poisoning and the will's conditions to his assistant. He agreed to an initial consultation for the following week, the final week before the reading. The pressure cooker was about to blow. I had to break Chloe, and then break Jake. The conflict was no longer a theoretical threat. It was a ticking clock. And I had to choose the right moment to make the confession, knowing that the wrong moment could cost us the lives of our twin babies. I looked at the encrypted evidence files on my laptop, then at the calendar. 3 weeks down. Only 1 week remained. The lawyer told me the will didn't care if Chloe was pregnant. It cared about Jake's discretionary conduct. Meanwhile, Tiffany cracked and sent me a message begging for immunity, hinting she had the remaining poison. Now, I had to choose between giving Chloe the evidence that would shatter her and waiting for a trap to be sprung. The final week before the will reading was a relentless, suffocating sprint. The legal and emotional fronts were colliding, forcing impossible decisions. I had the certified, damning transcripts from Sapphira, showing Jake's intent to kill our children, but the medical pressure from Dr. Holloway was a heavy chain around my neck. Stress equals risk. My consultation with Lucian Mansfield completely shifted the legal strategy. He was 60, silver-haired, and brutally pragmatic. I presented him with the will, specifically the clause about Chloe needing to have a child for the main inheritance, and all the evidence against Jake. Lucian read through everything, marking sections with sticky notes. He looked up and delivered the pivotal twist. Listen closely. The critical factor here isn't your wife's pregnancy status at the reading. It's the discretionary conduct clause. I stared blankly. The will gives the trustee power to delay or deny distributions if an heir's behavior causes harm to other family members. We don't have to prove Jake violated the pregnancy condition by poisoning her. We just need to show he acted with malicious intent to harm a beneficiary. The trustee can use their discretion to pause or deny his inheritance based on that conduct alone. This clause, Lucian emphasized, tapping the page, exists specifically for situations like this. Jake's entire financial plan is based on a condition that's secondary to his own documented criminal behavior. This changed everything. Jake's guaranteed $4 million was no longer certain. It was subject to professional review. Justice could be delivered through legal processes, not just by Chloe showing up pregnant. 2 days before our emergency therapy session with Faye, a notification popped up on my phone. It was a direct message on Instagram from Tiffany. The panic was palpable even through the screen. "I need to talk to you privately. Can we meet somewhere public? I have information to share, but I need to know what kind of trouble I'm facing first." She was cracking. Jake's arrogance had been her protection, but the ultrasound reveal, coupled with his reckless spending, had clearly broken her nerve. She was looking for an out, seeking to save herself from being an accomplice in a criminal conspiracy. I showed the message to Chloe, who was sitting on the couch, exhausted from her part-time work schedule and twice-weekly monitoring. She stared at the screen for a long time. "She's trying to save herself," Chloe said, her voice hollow. "But if she has proof, we need it." I messaged Tiffany back, setting a meeting at a busy downtown coffee shop the next afternoon. Lucian cautioned me. Her motive is self-preservation, not remorse. But useful evidence is useful evidence. Get whatever she's offering. Document everything. And don't promise her immunity. The meeting with Tiffany was grim. She was a wreck, her hands shaking as she nursed a latte. She started talking fast, claiming Jake had pressured her, claiming she thought the pills were only preventatives, not abortifacients. I let her lie, driving her toward the only thing that mattered. She finally reached the point. She had the remaining poison, the small amber container, and crucial screenshots of texts where she and Jake discussed buying the substance and dosage amounts. She wanted to know if handing it over would keep her out of jail. "I can't make promises about criminal charges, Tiffany," I told her, my voice steady and cold. "But cooperating and providing evidence will matter to the authorities." She agreed to meet again the next day to hand over the physical evidence. I walked out of the coffee shop and called Lucian immediately. He confirmed that Tiffany's cooperation, while self-serving, would make the criminal case against Jake airtight. The next day, she handed over the pill packaging photos, the text message screenshots, and the small amber container of the poison itself. My stomach turned as I documented the evidence, photographing it all right there at the table. It was the final, undeniable proof. Now, I was ready for the most dangerous part of the plan, the confession. We were scheduled for an emergency couples therapy session with Faye Holloway. I had to tell Chloe everything, with professional support in the room. We sat on the couch in Faye's office. I started with the cruise, the language, and the pill swap, deliberately softening the details. But then Faye asked the crucial question, turning to me. "Why did you wait over a week to tell Chloe about the poisoning?" My defensive wall crumbled. I explained my fear, her spiraling into another crisis, the doctor's warning about stress. Faye nodded, then turned to Chloe. "Chloe, your partner believed he was protecting you. But how did it feel to learn he had kept this massive secret, that he made a decision about your body and your safety without you?" Chloe's eyes, which had been blank with confusion, suddenly filled with rage. She sprang to her feet, her chair scraping across the floor. "He killed them, all 7 of them. For money. And you knew for days and didn't tell me." Her voice escalated, a sharp, piercing scream that cut through the calm of the room. "You are all liars. My brother was poisoning me for years, pretending to care, and you kept this secret, pretending everything was normal." She began hyperventilating, her hands gripping her stomach protectively. It was a full-blown panic attack, exactly what I had feared. Faye immediately moved to her, speaking in a calm, low voice, grounding her, asking her to name 5 things she could see. While Chloe cried and fought for air, the terrible truth of my moral dilemma slammed into me. I had protected her physical safety, but in doing so, I had stripped her of her agency, her right to the truth. I had chosen a slower, less immediately harmful betrayal over the immediate, explosive shock. After almost 10 minutes, the panic subsided. Chloe collapsed back into the chair, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know who to trust anymore," she whispered, her voice raw. Faye acknowledged the depth of the betrayal and helped us create a plan. Safety first, medical appointments, stress reduction. Evidence second, legal accountability, and confrontation last, only when ready and with support. We agreed on daily communication check-ins and my solemn promise never to make unilateral decisions regarding her health or safety again. We left the session with a clear roadmap, but the emotional damage was done. Chloe was still furious with me, barely looking me in the eye. But she agreed to the plan. I had the complete dossier. medical proof, certified transcripts, cruise footage evidence, and now, the physical poison and accomplice testimony. The stage was set. With only a few days until the reading, Lucian advised the final, strategic twist. We wouldn't ambush Jake at the reading. We would present all the evidence privately to the trustee's office beforehand, letting the professional process handle the confrontation. This protected our credibility and gave the trustee the authority to shut down Jake's theatrics. The game of revenge was over. The quest for professional, irreversible justice had begun. I watched my brother-in-law's face turn ashen as the certified translator, in a cold, monotone voice, read his own words about the abortion pills and the 7 necessary business decisions to his entire family. He didn't get the money, but we didn't get a perfect ending. We got boundaries, trauma, and 2 tiny hearts fighting to live. The morning of the will reading was a day of calculated composure. We met Dex, the trustee, privately at his office 1 hour before the reading. We presented him with the complete evidence packet, the certified transcripts of the poisoning plot, Dr. Holloway's medical documentation, Tiffany's written admission and the physical proof of the poison, the cruise line's formal letter detailing Jake's threatening behavior, and the bank statements confirming his reckless spending. Dex, a man trained in dealing with generational greed, read through the dossier carefully. His face grew harder with each page. He stopped at the translated conversations, reading passages aloud to himself, then shaking his head slowly. "This is thorough, professional work," he stated. He promised to announce a distribution hold on Jake's funds pending a full investigation into his conduct. We arrived at the conference room. Jake walked in wearing a brand new, expensive suit, whispering to Tiffany in their secret language about his guaranteed payout. He was oblivious, radiating a smug confidence that made my stomach clench. The reading began. Lucian started by outlining the will structure, then focused sharply on the discretionary conduct clause. Jake barely paid attention, scrolling on his phone. Then, Dex stood up. The room went silent. "Mr. Jake Murphy's distribution is temporarily on hold," Dex announced, his voice calm and professional. "Pending review of materials submitted regarding his conduct toward other beneficiaries." Jake's phone hit the table. His face shifted from confident smirk to panicked confusion in less than 2 seconds. "What materials? Who submitted them?" he demanded, his voice escalating to the aggressive yell he'd used on the cruise staff. That's when Sapphira, the certified translator, stood up from the back of the room. She introduced herself and opened her folder. In a calm, steady, official voice, she began reading from the certified transcript. "On the 3rd day of the cruise, Mr. Murphy stated to his accomplice, 'The abortion pills you put in her vitamins are working perfectly.'" A collective gasp swept the room. Jake's mother covered her mouth. Tiffany started to cry. Sapphira continued, reading Jake's calculating phrase, 7 miscarriages though. 7 necessary business decisions. The color drained completely from Jake's face. His father stared at him with pure horror and disgust. He tried to interrupt, but Sapphira's monotone, official voice was relentless, condemning him with his own words. When she finished, Chloe stood up, her hands visibly trembling, but her voice clear from weeks of therapy practice. She delivered the statement Faye had helped her prepare. "I know everything. I have evidence of everything, including medical records and witness statements. My brother tried to kill my babies for money. I will not have any contact with him until all legal matters are fully resolved." She sat down, grabbing my hand under the table, her strength breathtaking. The climax led directly to the inevitable consequences. Lucian drove us straight from the reading to the police station. We filed a formal report detailing attempted felony assault and conspiracy to commit murder. The detective was immediately serious, recognizing the strength of the case based on the transcripts, the medical notes, and Tiffany's physical evidence. Within 48 hours, Tiffany contacted the detective, providing the final, crucial pieces of evidence, including the remaining poison bottle and handwritten notes from Jake outlining the plan. She was trying to save herself, but her evidence made the criminal case against Jake airtight. Jake's attorney called Lucian, seeking plea negotiations. The evidence was too strong. A trial meant certain conviction and jail time. Simultaneously, Dex confirmed that Jake's funds were permanently paused, not taken away entirely, but frozen pending the resolution of criminal proceedings and a monitored rehabilitation plan that could take 5 or more years. The stress, however, had its cost. 2 weeks later, at our high-risk OB/GYN appointment, Chloe's blood pressure was critically high. The doctor sat us down, no longer offering suggestions, but imposing mandates: maximum part-time work, mandatory daily rest, and absolute avoidance of emotional upheaval. You need to treat your calm as a prescription, the doctor stressed. Twin pregnancies are high risk. We cannot take chances. High blood pressure can lead to early delivery or preeclampsia. Chloe cried in the exam room, overwhelmed by the realization that even justice came with a terrifying price tag. The final piece of healing came in therapy. Faye helped us establish the no-contact boundaries. Jake would have zero contact until he completed his probation, and both Chloe and I agreed. Jake's parents could visit the twins, but only with us present, and only after scheduling. Months later, at 34 weeks, Chloe went into labor. We rushed to the hospital. Our twins were born early, tiny but fighting, and spent 2 agonizing weeks in the NICU. 3 months after the babies came home, a letter arrived from Dex's office. It confirmed Jake was under a monitored rehabilitation plan with no access to funds for at least 5 years. We received a modest grant for our medical expenses, but it barely mattered. We were not dependent on the money anymore. Tonight, the twins are finally asleep. Chloe is curled up next to me, exhausted but calm. We didn't get the perfect ending where the villain rotted in jail and all the trauma vanished. What we got was messier, harder, and real. We got boundaries that actually protected us, 2 healthy babies who fought to live, and the knowledge that true safety isn't in a will or a bank account. It's in the courage to speak the truth and the difficult, ongoing work of choosing trust over fear every single day. The money is frozen, the brother is gone, but we are here, and that, finally, is enough.